Welcome back to the podcast that is yet to be named. We are working on a name right now, but we don't have one yet, not one set in stone, so we're sticking with this unknown, all right?
Damn, bars.
Damn, I didn't even mean to do that, but all right. So today, first off, we're going to be talking about the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then after that, we'll be discussing the Snyder Cut of the Justice League. And we were going to be talking about Attack on Titan, but it's releasing later in the day, so we're not going to have time to watch both episodes and then come back out here and review. So, yeah, I guess that's all it. You know, obviously, first stuff, check us out on Instagram, other platforms, all that stuff will be down in the description. And there will be timestamps for you if you only care about one of the things we're talking about today. Getting into it, Jacob, if you have any...
Yeah, I actually got a decent amount of notes for this first Falcon and Winter Soldier episode. I mean, first let's just start off by saying that it's automatically already a different pace than WandaVision, and I like it. It's like classic MCU. You're not going to get lost or confused. It's just bam, straight to the point, basic MCU type stuff.
Yeah, it's like old Captain America movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the first scenes, even though you see Sam fighting, which, you know, proves that he's capable as a fighter on his own. He doesn't need any help, which, you know, is good. But Cap's funeral. Steve Rogers is actually dead in the first episode, and he goes to his funeral, but Sam gives up the shield. And now I've already seen a lot of talk saying, okay, well, if Bucky had the shield, he would not have given it up to the Smithsonian at all. But Sam giving it up just shows something, like he thinks he's not worthy, he's not ready, whatever the case may be. That was interesting. I teared up a bit during that because it was just like, it's Captain America. His story arc is officially completed. He's gone. He's no more. And you got to see civilian life of Bucky and Sam and how they're adjusting from combat back to the real world, the civilian world. Which is quite interesting. I mean, Bucky's going to therapy. He's got a place in New York. He's just trying to live a normal life. Even in that, there is one scene too, where you see him waking up from a nightmare, but he's on the floor.
Yeah, and I thought that Bucky's whole thing was probably the more engaging, more interesting of the two, just in this first episode, just because it does seem like he has a lot that he's dealing with. I mean, like, he was talking to the Asian guy, which
it's his reconciliation.
Yeah, like that. That's the father. Like that guy's son was killed by Bucky.
Yep.
Like I don't
by the Winter Soldier. If you really want to differentiate the two.
But like he obviously feels like shit about that, so he's out here hanging out with this father trying to make things right. And like, yeah, it just seems like he's really struggling, where but also obviously Falcon's dealing with a lot too. Like, it's just they're different sorts of things, and I feel like, just me being who I am, I feel like I'm more interested in Bucky's situation at the moment.
He's also he's also trying to put away the people that was in Hydra that are still out there that he helped. I mean, he put away that one woman of doing arguably nothing illegal.
Yeah.
Which is, he got pardoned. Cap essentially pardoned him from his crimes. And, I mean, he had valid evidence and everything that he was being mind controlled and under a spell, essentially. Yeah, Bucky's reconciliation. I can't wait to see where that goes and how he adjusts to the civilian life. But, I mean, it's also the same for Sam. I mean, Sam's kind of more used to it than, like, Cap and Bucky were, because especially when they were put on ice, that's all they knew. And it's so weird to see. And now I think they are starting with the inequality, because, Sam is an African-American man. He went to go try to get a loan, and they couldn't approve him for the loan. He's like, well, he has no credit for the last 5 years. And his sister was like, he wasn't here the last 5 years. What do you expect?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I did see some articles, and like, partially I think there's some people misinterpreting that. I definitely think that specific thing that you mentioned is something that could show racism.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other people, like somebody said like, oh, this shows that it's like there's a pay gap in the Avengers, and I'm like, well, no, that's not it. Because like they're trying to like they don't want it to be like, oh yeah, all the Avengers, they're only doing it for money. Like they want it to be like they're just heroes. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Exactly.
Like,
but it's also weird if you think about it logistically here. Bucky is set because no matter what, he fought for America in World War II. He's a veteran. He's gonna get war money, whether he's a criminal or not. Same thing with Cap. Vision and Wanda just lived in the Avengers compound. Hawkeye worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. He got paid for being a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. He's set for life. Same thing with Natasha.
oh, she did though.
I know, but she was set for life, you know. Tony was, Tony Stark.
He's just rich. So.
And then I'm trying to think of everyone, like Thor just kind of wanders now. The Guardians have always wandered. It just Sam's the only one really in that weird position. Like, why isn't he taken care of? I mean, he's a veteran also. He was in the Air Force.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that like in this country we really do take care of our veterans that much. Like, there's not really any guarantee. I think the reason that you'd have like Bucky getting taken care of more is because he was part of like a famous group of soldiers. Like, you know, he's somebody that like he could probably make money just from like going and giving speeches or something.
Well, not anymore. Now he's more infamous.
True, but
than
like
anything. But yes, like I get exactly what you're saying. But it's just super interesting to see this other side of soldiers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's realism. If you think about it. I mean, soldiers and veterans go through this. My own grandfather went through it, where to the point where he came back from Vietnam and he didn't even sleep in the house. They had like this shed barn thing in the backyard. He slept out there. He showered with the hose because that's just what he got accustomed to for years in the jungles in Vietnam. Like, it's the same thing. And I mean, that's how Sam and Steve bonded when they first met, was because they were both soldiers trying to be civilians.
Yeah.
And I think that's how Bucky and Sam are going to bond. Through that same avenue.
I could see that. Yeah, and I think I think it's going to be interesting like seeing where they actually go, because like obviously Falcon gets the shield back, but like they have the new Captain America.
Yes.
You know, that rando.
It's funny, I was talking to my dad about it. The guy who I forget his name. He's some government agent. I forget his name, but the actor is actually Kurt Russell's son, who played Ego, you know, in the Guardians. So I thought that was pretty interesting while talking to my dad. But also, with these TV shows, I don't know if, like, how I would feel. I mean, the movies that they would be coming out with take place before Endgame. So they obviously just fill in gaps in the existing timeline. But with these TV shows coming out, they're starting new story arcs, new character arcs. You know, they finished up essentially Hawkeye's, because Hawkeye's just going to be focused into Kate Bishop. Natasha's dead. Hulk is, I'm pretty sure he's the main smart guy now, if you think about it anyway. But, you know, Steve and Tony's character arcs, you know, they got wrapped up. They have to start new ones. They started Wanda's in WandaVision. I feel like they're starting Sam's and Bucky's in the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, not to cut you off, but I saw this article earlier. You know, the agent that was stopping that like bank robbery with everyone with the masks?
Yeah.
In the comics, Torres, that's his name, becomes the new Falcon after Sam becomes the new Captain America. But instead of having mechanical wings, he has real wings that, you know, go below his arm. And as of right now, I believe it's completely plausible that because of, you know, that guy who had super strength, wherever he got that from, he might get the same deal but react differently and might gain those wings.
Could see that, yeah.
which would be interesting because they do just kind of like fill in the gaps. Like Sam goes to Captain America, and then Torres would become the Falcon.
Yeah. Hey, that sounds good to me. I mean, but honestly, at the same time, I would like to see like Falcon as he is just get the additional abilities like with the shield. I feel like that creates
that's his Captain America anyway.
Yeah.
His Captain America, he still has the mechanical wings and everything. And he just essentially adds the shield to his arsenal. That's all he really does.
Which there's a lot that you can do with that. I mean, in the trailer, you did see like a few things where he was like taking people out. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and especially with the combo, like with Bucky, if they get good chemistry going on and a good friendship, that's killer.
Yeah.
That's killer. And there was some good humor, especially with Bucky when he went on his date with that woman at the bar. When she was like, "So how old are you?" He was like, 106, and she laughs, and he just like cracked a smile, but then immediately went back to straight faced.
Yeah.
Which just shows the type of character he is, where it's like he can crack jokes, but he doesn't find himself funny in any way.
Yeah.
He knew it would be a joke to her, but he didn't find it funny whatsoever.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, very, very good first episode.
Yeah.
A lot more straightforward.
Going back to the roots of the MCU.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was nice.
Yeah. So I'd say like probably we wait to give our final.
Yeah, we're gonna wait to the end to give a
rating.
A rating, but it's just a good start.
Very good start. Yeah. So
anyone can pick it up and watch it too. It's watchable for anyone.
It's something that you don't need to have seen what happened before that much. But
like they completely explain everything. They talk about the blip. Talk about everyone was gone for 5 years and how like the world is adjusting to them coming back.
Yeah.
And so on.
Nice and simple.
All right.
So yeah, moving into the Snyder Cut now. This is gonna probably make up the majority of the conversation here.
Yeah.
I
mean, what did you think overall?
So, I feel like, from more of an objective perspective, I don't think it's anything too special. I feel like a lot of people right now are giving it sort of hyperinflated scores because they're comparing it to the first version. Which
obviously compared to the theatrical version, it is that much better.
Yeah, it's
than
like
the theatrical version.
You compare like I would say that. I mean, obviously, on a scale from the theatrical version to this version, it's a 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Yes. But on a scale from like just, basically you're taking a movie that was horrible, in my opinion, and you fixed it to make it average or slightly above average. Like you made it a movie that works as a movie.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a long time DC fan. I've read the Brightest Day comics, the Darkest Night comics. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, so I was, obviously I was extremely disappointed by Ryan Reynolds' movie on that. But like, I'd probably give this a lot higher than you, Tom, just because I know the potential that it could have been that Zack Snyder tried to get out of it.
Yeah.
But DC and Warner Brothers didn't let him.
Yeah, and I mean it does set up a lot of cool things at the end that unfortunately
it would set up a future.
Yeah, like we were not gonna get, and and I guess kind of doing a background like you did. I'm not as big of a DC fan. Like I'll watch the movies, but I never really read the comics or anything. Like I watched a few of the shows. Like I saw like Teen Titans and stuff like that. But I was never like any sort of fan on the level of you with this. So I mean, part of it, like, I wasn't overly invested in, like, just the world itself, other than, like, what the movie did for me. But, I mean, it really, compared to the first movie, it does a far better job at making you care about the characters. Like,
oh, easily. Yeah. So 20 times better than the original. Because the Flash actually had a role in the fight, other than just being comedic relief.
Yeah, or the Russian family.
Yes. Exactly.
Or, like, the fact that Cyborg, like, you actually care about him. Like, he...
Yeah, which, I mean, just what the Snyder Cut did, and now Zack Snyder is a huge DC fan. He grew up with it, the comics, the old Batman movies, the old Superman movie, everything. He's a huge fan. So, obviously, he knew how to at least make it right.
Yeah.
And have it be on track with the plot that it's based on. Because the Joss Whedon one, horrible.
Yeah.
Shit should never be talked about ever again after this.
Yeah, I agree.
It should be non-canon. Done. Because if Zack Snyder came out with this movie originally, people would not hate DC as much.
Yeah, although we have to acknowledge that this movie probably wouldn't have worked if it were like, I don't think you could have released it in theaters.
No.
Too long, and like the formatting was weird.
The pacing was very weird at some points. I mean, the first 2 hours of the movie is pure setup,
which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it's a bad thing either.
I think actually it helped a lot, and I wouldn't even blame the movie itself, because we have to look at what the DCEU was back when it was supposed to be the movie that came out.
Yep.
There was really like you look at the MCU, okay? All the characters except for 2 for before the first Avengers had gotten movies to explain them, and the other 2 characters were already in those movies. Like, yep. Basically you already knew everybody leading up to it. You kind of understood what they were all about. Like what they want,
their morals, how their character works,
like enough
their place in the world. Just you knew the characters and you knew them well enough to go into a combination movie very comfortably.
Yeah, so then you're not they didn't feel the need to develop these characters. Now you go to DC, really leading up to it, the only characters that had gotten anything or their own movies were Batman and Superman. Yeah, that's it. So you had basically there was 4 people. Well, actually, did Wonder Woman happen yet at that point?
Well, Wonder Woman was in Batman v Superman.
But did the Wonder Woman movie come out after? I can't remember.
I think it came out after. Same thing with Aquaman, obviously. But chronologically, the Aquaman movie actually takes place after the Justice League movie.
Yeah, because it's... Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how much people don't care. The fact that I don't remember this stuff. But yeah, I mean, basically, there was a lot of people that it was the first time that you had ever seen them. Mm-hmm. Or, first time that you ever really got to know them. They had to explain everything, and you can't do that
in 2 hours, or 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and then still have a cohesive story. Mm-hmm. The movie had to be this long, and I think Warner Brothers and everybody they were mad that it was gonna be that long, and that's kind of why I think they
even though Zack Snyder left production due to personal reasons.
I think if he hadn't, they probably would have tried to find another reason to get rid of him. Just because of that. But it's no. The reason that this movie is like that, it's not really his fault. That's just what he was handed.
Yep.
So
and he was handed very minimum rights to it, because they were can't use Green Lantern. For example, he wanted Ryan Reynolds, Hal Jordan, to be in the film as a side character, and now within the comics, and there is an animated film essentially with the same storyline, or very, very similar storyline with a lot of the same characters. Animated, great movie. It was on Netflix for a time. I completely forget the name of it right now, but it was a great movie to watch, very enjoyable. And Hal Jordan is in the movie, but he was going to use Hal Jordan more as a side character, which in reality, at this point in time, there are 2 Green Lanterns on Earth. Jon Stewart, which he also wanted, but he wanted him to be the main Green Lantern in it, and Hal Jordan as a side character. But essentially to compensate for not having those 2, because Warner Brothers were no, with the whole stigma and the representation of Green Lantern within film right now, it's still rough. Still not in a clear, okay, go zone. So they gave him Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
Which is cool, because then he used him to set up the future.
Yeah, which I did want to talk about the ending. I think that the last, the epilogue sequence could have been edited a lot better. I think, if you don't know what it's supposed to be, mm-hmm. There were times, because I didn't know that they were going to set up stuff at the end. Because I knew that they were going to, that was part of the original plan. But going into it, I figured that they wouldn't include that because they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They don't want to get people's hopes up.
Mm-hmm.
But so in the scene, when it's suddenly the scene in the the future with the Joker and everybody, I'm at first I was what the fuck is this?
Yeah. At first I was obviously we knew it was gonna be there. because there was a very similar scene in the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
But it was weird for it to kind of be in the epilogue, but they did it in a manner to where, like, oh, obviously you were confused at the beginning of what the hell was going on at that scene and that event. But then as soon as, like, Batman wakes up from the dream and then Martian Manhunter's there, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I know what happens.
But I don't think, like, usually there's something in a dream sequence, like, you know, you just edit it in a way to make it clear, like, this is a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, you know, because there's something, like, it just felt like suddenly they cut to this other thing. Because they had the first scene where it was, like, on the yacht. Okay, like, and then it just suddenly cuts to this, like, as if it's like, oh, we're just going to this place on the planet now. Like, it's not like if I were the editor, I would have done something.
Then again, they also were working on very limited funds to put this movie together. Also,
yeah, I mean, you have to consider that, but it's one of those things where, like, from a filmmaking perspective, I don't know if it was like with that limitation and the fact that you're not going to make another movie after this.
I'm gonna actually save that to the end of this because I still want to talk about, like, the bulk of the movie rather than cutting to the future of it. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it was kind of like abrupt and thrown in there. They only filmed that last scene with Martian Manhunter was added in. They filmed most of the money. It was Zack Snyder's own money for the most part. Was put into post-production. Of course, you're very limited in post-production. His wife was doing most of it. Like, there wasn't much room for leeway. Like, and you'll understand, like, I essentially have two scores for the movie. One, including the limitations. One, if this came out without limitations. Which I'll speak those at the end.
Okay.
But yeah. It's like, I get what you're saying. It was kind of, like, abrupt and weird. The pacing throughout the middle of the movie was also very strange. I mean, but Zack Snyder's, like, the king of that, though.
Yeah.
If you watch any of his other films, the pacing is always super strange.
Yeah, but I mean, credit where credit's due. I mean, I would say that, like, a lot of the first half of the movie, if you didn't have, like, the threat, you know, the villain and everything, you could probably turn this into, like, more of just like a character movie, like kind of, I don't know what you'd actually describe it as, so I'll just say, like, the type of, like, an Oscar type movie. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it has that sort of tone, like, especially some of the Lois Lane scenes and everything. Like, those are very much, like, shot in a way that gives you that feeling. So I thought that was good, like, just from a, you know, appreciating film kind of perspective. But then I look at, like I think a lot of it is quite average. Like I kind of said before, like I think the villain, I don't even remember his name.
Well, Steppenwolf and Darkseid.
Steppenwolf, yeah. Well, Darkseid, that was cool, but, like, Steppenwolf...
That's, like, the main thing that, like, really irked me about the theatrical cut was because Darkseid was supposed to be present, like in the Snyder Cut. Solely relying on Steppenwolf was such a poor idea.
Because he's not that interesting.
No,
I mean,
not
like,
at all.
And even, like, Darkseid's goals, I don't think they're anything, like, too crazy. And maybe this is just because we're so used to, like, a Thanos, where it's, like, he has, like, more interesting goals. Like you could sit
He's
down,
a more moral villain.
or not even that. It's just, like, he has more of an argument for what he's trying to do, where you have, like these guys, they're like, basically it's just like, I want to just destroy the world. I want to, you know, turn it into
here's the thing. You know, Earth is different. That's usually his goal. And I'm going to get up this Instagram post because IGN posted about it and I want to refer back to it. But the anti-life equation. They didn't really dive deep into it, but that's where Darkseid lies, okay? If this would load, this would be great. But essentially the anti-life equation is, like, engraved within Earth. That's why he wants it. He wants to form the unity to be able to then turn Earth into a or essentially that's what the mother boxes do. It creates a unity, and then creates planets like Apocalypse, which is Darkseid's home planet. The anti-life equation explained by, this is an IGN post on Instagram. The anti-life equation is a mathematical formula that proves the futility of existence and free will. In the wrong hands, the formula is a terrible weapon with the power to brainwash and enslave entire worlds. And now this is on Earth. Therefore, he needs to turn Earth into an apocalyptic planet to gain that.
Okay.
To gain that formula so then he can control the universe. And now they didn't explain this in the Snyder Cut because obviously if you in a world, let's just say that it's continued, that eventually the anti-life equation would be explained. Yeah. So I can kind of see where your point is coming from of not knowing the information of like his ultimate goals, but like that's his goal.
Okay, I can see that. I mean, that's a little bit better. I still think when it comes down to it, like putting all that stuff aside, like it still is a pretty basic goal of like I want to control the universe. Yeah. Not to say that that's like necessarily a bad thing. A lot of superhero movies are like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just like you do get that certain like post Endgame effect, or really like I guess I would like to call it like the 10 out of 10, the new 10 out of 10 effect. Yeah. Where, like when you have something, like you could have like 10 out of 10, and then like 2 years later they release a movie that's better. Like that's now what you have to reach to get a 10 out of 10. Like if this would be like a 9.5 now.
Yeah.
And I'd say like that's what it is. Now I'm kind of every single villain, if it's not somebody that like makes me think or like proposes like actually challenges my beliefs, I don't find them that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even if like straying back to the source material, and now obviously there's huge debates. People today are now used to Marvel because Marvel is everywhere. Marvel is supposed to be more lighthearted, more comical, and obviously DC tried to adapt to that. But you cannot do that with DC movies. DC comics and storylines are not built like that. They're built to be very, very serious, very straightforward, gruesome, much, much, much darker.
Yeah,
than MCU movies, and people aren't used to that, and people don't like it now.
Yeah, but you have to kind of do it in the right way. Like I think, I mean, you look at something like Joker. I mean that
was done correctly.
Like and people went into it knowing what to expect.
Yeah, but then again, the Joker is also still a very known character. Most of the DC characters aren't.
Yeah, I mean,
so like obviously the comedic relief within the Flash was also much better within the Snyder Cut. It was cringy in the theatrical cut. It wasn't even like you couldn't even consider it comedy at that point. But like as a DC lover, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. And obviously like if you're not used to watching long movies, but like we are accustomed to it because we've seen the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, and those go to 4 to 5 hours long anyway. So that's no excuse for me not to, or that's not an excuse for me to hate on the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate on it for it. I do think that, and I was talking to my family about this, I think it's a movie that, I don't know, I feel like any movie that is that long, I feel like it needs to be like something a little bit more special. And I like I said earlier, this movie would not have worked if it was shorter. Like it could not have worked. So it had to be this long. But regardless of that, I do think I don't think it's a movie that reaches that bar that makes it feel like it's worth sitting down to watch for 4 hours. Like something like this. I saw it once. It was good. I enjoyed it. I don't think I'd ever watch it again. Or maybe if I was showing it to like my kids, I'd watch it again. But I mean, I don't ever feel the need to watch this again. Whereas something like Lord of the Rings, I'll watch that again.
That's super rewatchable.
Even though it's would iconic. Be a huge commitment.
Exactly. But even like the stigmas behind DC, like the stigma and the representation of DC got ruined.
Yeah.
Absolutely ruined by the Justice League. I mean, granted, Batman v Superman was about an average film, and Man of Steel was a slightly above average film. Like, you know what I mean? And like that, and compared to Marvel, they did this in a much shorter time frame. Much, much shorter, like a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
That DC had. So yeah, like I don't feel it's right to compare the two, but because people are so used to Marvel, it like upsets me. It's like people are so accustomed to it, and then whenever they see something different, they're like, "Oh, I don't like it. Oh, I don't like it." It's like, okay, you grew up with something that's funny and lighthearted, but no, when someone comes to get a chest or an axe to their chest, or Darkseid's laser beams going all over the damn place, and people just getting pierced with it, you're not okay with it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, but I'm personally not like that. Like I really don't mind having sort of like no
dark
comedy.
themes and no comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think this movie, like, I don't know, I feel like if I go into a serious movie, I want something a little bit something more to think about. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Granted, with what Zack Snyder had, he didn't really have much room to do that. He was working with a 4-hour movie and done type of thing. Like Cyborg, The Flash, and Wonder Woman, like literally only 2 of the characters you knew about beforehand.
And I would say too, like, it's a very looking back at, like, just to do another comparison to Marvel, but for a point, I mean, the Avengers, the villain, I mean, like, Loki was interesting, but, like, a lot of the enemies that they were actually fighting were kind of generic. Like, I don't think that one was too groundbreaking, but then, like, there was a promise of more with them introducing Thanos and kind of showing that he was behind everything.
Yeah.
And, like, it was
they
more
had way more of a setup, which is the flaw of the Justice League.
Well, but then you'd say, like, the Justice League, like the Snyder Cut did hint that there was more to come.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to see that. So
at least that we know we're not gonna be able to see it.
So I think if they had gotten the chance, like if Snyder, like, even if he gets it now, like if they look back and they're like, hey, we're gonna let you continue.
Yeah.
I think after, like, a few of these movies, when you finally get to the point where, like, everything's built up, I think it really could be great. Like, now that we know all these characters and, like, we care about them, they can actually do, like, a much more interesting movie. Like, they could do a 2-hour movie. We already know the characters, and then they could focus on developing a really interesting villain. Like,
yeah. See, but then that, like, also like raises the, like, okay, I'll talk about this later because I just want to talk about, like, the main focus of the movie is that, like, the movie is more accurate comic book wise.
Yeah.
Way more accurate. Cyborg got jack shit in the theatrical. Jack shit. When he's essentially the focal point of the film.
Yeah.
Which is what they made him in the Snyder Cut, which is how it should have been originally.
Yeah.
And the Flash is actually one of the most powerful superheroes of all time. Like, if you think Quicksilver is fast, he is a turtle compared to the Flash. Like, he reversed time.
Yeah.
To be able to ignite the mother box. Like, he did that completely unknowingly. And then he did it at the end, reversing time to stop the dark side from emerging and the mother box from exploding, or the Unity at that point is what it would have been.
Yeah. Which, by the way, just as a side note, it's good that they took out the stuff about basically saying, like, yeah, Superman can do that, it can be that fast too. Like, there's not that much special about the Flash.
Even though you still got the glimpse of it when Superman was first revived.
Yeah, but it wasn't as, like,
it wasn't as direct and be like, hey, fuck you.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But yeah, it was good that they weren't like, hey, Superman's as fast as the Flash. Where it's like, he's not as fast because Superman cannot time travel.
Yeah.
The Flash can. But it's also, you got more background on the Flash. You know, that his father's in jail, wrongfully in jail for that matter. And right at the end, it picks up as, Barry gets a forensics job. That's literally Barry Allen right there.
Yep.
And they just set it up perfectly. The characters are way more in depth. I will say though, Wonder Woman is the best fighter out of all of them.
Yeah, she's very skilled.
She's the most skilled, and then again, she's had the most practice, obviously, out of all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say it was a very enjoyable movie. What else do I have here? Yeah, we got Cyborg. Yeah, I hit off everything, all the notes I took, but it was thoroughly way more enjoyable. And now, granted, depending on for the future, it raises a lot of questions. Now, HBO could buy the rights to DC from Warner Brothers.
I don't know if they would.
It'd be expensive. They could, but who knows if they would.
Yeah, maybe it would. But then that would a deal.
Yeah, they would have to cut some sort of deal, but then that would essentially allow Zack Snyder to do what the hell he wants.
Yeah.
But then that leaves the questions. Are you gonna make Ryan Reynolds, even though I don't think he'd want to, reprise Green Lantern? I strongly would think against it.
Someone else just do it.
I'd rather them just introduce Jon Stewart and do Hal Jordan a different time.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's 3 human Green Lanterns: Guy Gardner, Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, and they all represent different types of Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into that because it's lengthy. But yeah. And then they introduced Martian Manhunter. They set it up as well as they could at the end for the future. But that also raises, like, the question, if somehow Zack Snyder can't continue, will, like Henry Cavill, reprise his role as Batman? Because as of right now, Robert Pattinson's Batman. Are they essentially going to be like, okay, yeah, Ben Affleck is Batman there, but just you can think he's Robert Pattinson? Or are they going to do something where, like, DC connects the Robert Pattinson Batman to the Joker movie, and they kind of reboot it from there?
Yeah,
which is completely plausible.
There's a lot of things that they would have to figure out. I mean, I hope that they do.
So do I.
Yeah.
This, personally, I thoroughly enjoy and think way more about DC than I do Marvel.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite on that, but
well, you haven't been exposed to it as much as I have.
Yeah, I mean, I hope at some point they can be a little bit more close, but as of right now, I mean, obviously, like you said, me as more of a normie with DC, like they haven't given me much to
go off of,
yeah,
and to fully think about. But yeah, it's just, and now I was talking to Blast. I'd watched the movie last Saturday night, with Taylor, Lindsay, Blast, and Aiden, all at my place.
All friends of ours,
Yes.
Well, I guess we could.
And that was actually Aiden's point, bringing up that they could make the Robert Pattinson Batman and the Joker connect, and then kind of like reboot from there, all while still including Ezra Miller as the Flash, Ray Fisher as Cyborg, and Henry Cavill as Superman, and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. Like, they could leave all the individual movies canon, and then just essentially make the Batman v Superman movie and the Justice League non-canon because of Ben Affleck, unless Ben Affleck reprises his role, and then you consider at least the Joker and the Robert Pattinson Batman their own separate entity. They would just have to thoroughly think about it, and as of right now, I think they should just completely restart the Justice League and the Batman v Superman movies, keep all the individual movies, and then start with the Joker and Robert Pattinson Batman.
Yeah,
I think that's what they should do. Aiden pointed that out to me last night, and I thought it was a fairly valid idea. But obviously, if you read the comics, like the way I'm viewing it as of right now, Marvel has better movies, DC has better TV shows and comic books.
Yeah, well, at least
a lot of people could disagree with me,
at least
especially
animated.
at least animated.
Because like we don't really have much to go off of right now with like
Marvel.
I mean, we only have like one actual Marvel show, and like they're making a second one now.
Yes.
It's like, I mean, we can judge that later, I guess,
but as of right now, like DC has better, definite animated movies, but like I enjoyed at least the first half of The Flash and the first half of The Arrow. I thought those shows were great. And there's this old TV show that my mom absolutely loves called Smallville. I think every fan of superheroes just likes Smallville. It's such a... I think it's on Hulu. It might be on HBO now. I don't know. But it is such a phenomenal show. It's great. It's better than anything Marvel has put out right now.
Yeah.
And it's long. It's nice. You can absorb everything. It's great. But like DC Comics, like obviously you go back and forth on which one's better, Marvel or DC. It's like I like the dark stuff. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't like it. I like it. I think it adds way more depth, and it's way more enjoyable to see someone get their head cut off rather than someone just getting a boo-boo, getting bruised up and banged up and whatever. Like, I just think it's much more enjoyable to actually see people die.
Yeah.
Could just be me.
Well, I mean, like, obviously, as long as it's not just like, okay, here's the 3-second movie where we just see all of the characters get their heads blown up. Like, well, obviously there has to be a reason.
Yeah,
for, like,
yeah. Well, that's like the Darkest Night comic series. The Green Lantern, I would argue, is probably the most interesting comics ever, like Brightest Day and Darkest Night, because there's at a point where most of the Justice League members die and they become Black Lanterns, and then it's Green Lantern's duty to essentially put put them back in the grave.
Yeah.
Like, that's super, super interesting. And he makes a crew, and they all get together, and they fight off the Black Lanterns. It's so in depth. I would highly suggest to anyone. If you want some of the comics, I have them at my house.
Maybe at some point. I'm not sure.
Because I was going through them yesterday with Aiden and Blas when they were at my house. Because I was showing them. I have a bunch of Star Wars comics, a bunch of DC, and some X-Men, and all that stuff. But yeah, there's some of like the greatest pieces of comic books ever, and you could go back and forth and be like, okay, well, DC copied this. I'd be like, all right, so Marvel copied this. Like, for example, Darkseid came out before Thanos.
Yeah.
But also, Namor in DC or in Marvel came out before Aquaman.
Yeah.
So you could argue it's like, oh, Aquaman's a copy of Namor. I'd be like, oh, well, Thanos is a copy of Darkseid.
Yeah. Yeah, and
so you can go back and forth all day you want on that, but technically, DC Comics started up first.
Yeah.
They started everything with Superman. So,
well,
say what you want about it, but I'm just gonna say on a with the limitations that I know Zack Snyder had with this film, I give it an 8 out of 10 with the limitations. If they put out this movie with a much more massive budget and a lot more time, because they didn't take a lot of time to throw this thing together. So if they took their time, they had an abundance of money and people to work on this, I'd give it like a 6.
Yeah, okay, I'll say, because I didn't even think about breaking up the score like you did.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming into this, I was going to say it was a 6.
Yeah.
And I was going to, the way I would describe it is like, if they didn't, like if this was a 3-hour movie and there was less character development, like, maybe if there was some, but like it was just less, it wasn't done as well, it would have been a 5. It would have just been like a normal
average movie, just straight up the line. Yeah.
Because keep in mind our scale, average is a 5,
mm-hmm.
and then like 6 would be slightly above average, 4 would be slightly below, and so on.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that it's an average movie that's carried by its character development.
Which every film lover should appreciate good character development.
Absolutely, and but yes, I would say, assuming that there's a lot that Snyder wanted to do that he couldn't do. Yeah. Which I'll just say that's what happened. I assume that's what
it is.
Happened.
It is what like IGN's confirmed everything. There's multiple sources, articles that have come out in result of the Snyder Cut releasing and him making statements about how he wanted to do this but couldn't. He wanted to do that but couldn't. So like he actually planned out a whole Snyderverse of DC films and Justice League films. Mm. And now like there was one point that IGN posted about saying that like in the third Snyderverse Justice League movie, he wanted Lois Lane and Clark's kid to become Batman, which like depending on what comic book line you read, he would become Batman because he didn't get any powers, which is true. Like it's just true. But I tend to go back to like the more nuanced comic line of where like, okay, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd dies, which in the Justice League movie, Dick Grayson was already Robin and becoming Nightwing, and Jason Todd was already dead, and so that means like after this movie, if they made a Batman movie, Tim Drake would be the Robin, and then after that it'd be Damian Wayne, Bruce Wayne, and Talia al Ghul's kid. I would have wanted to go more of that side versus what Zack Snyder were going for, but like that's just more so creative differences.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things where like you wouldn't be the type of person who's like, if it's not exactly what I thought it was gonna be, then it's trash, and I don't ever want to see this shit. Like but
there's a lot of possibilities that could happen. I mean, right now the IMDb score from me checking last night is an 8.7.
Okay, that's not bad.
I disagree, and that's why I would go slightly lower and give it an 8 based on limitations. Yeah, but as a film,
you have to. Yeah, I think I said this earlier, but there's a lot of people that they're just riding the sort of like comparison train. Like, exactly. Like they're hyped that they got a passive, at least how should I say this?
A more acceptable, plausible canon material.
Like a movie that functions as a movie. Like
Mhm.
they're so excited to have gotten that. It's like when I mean, like what a lot of people were saying about The Mandalorian season 1, where it was like we had been getting shit for Star Wars, like garbage for 3 years at that point, and then we got something that was like good, like, just normal good. Like it wasn't anything groundbreaking in season 1,
No.
and people freaked out. They loved it because and they were saying it was amazing. We're like, it was. Don't get me wrong, it was good. I'd say it was even great at points, but like it was. I wouldn't put it up there with some other things.
Yeah.
But people were, just because all that they've been getting for a while was trash. So it's the same sort of effect. You know, people had gotten a shitty version of this movie, then they got a good version. You know, just a solid movie. Like it has a beginning, middle, and end that work.
That was that
you know,
that went together and created a complete plot and storyline.
Yeah, I mean, a movie that does the basics well. Like, you know, people. I think right now they're like, this is going to be something where people over time, like in 6 months, we're going to be seeing video essays of people being like, "Oh yeah, it's good, but like it's not as good as
It could have been,
you
or
know.
it should have been.
Yeah. So
Definitely. I mean, it's just like Zack Snyder got put in such like a shitty situation. Like he left for personal reasons. Like something was going on in his life at the time.
yeah,
They replaced him with Joss Whedon almost immediately, and he was like, "Okay, screw everything you filmed. We're refilming it all."
yeah. Which that's the worst thing that you can do. Whether it's a trilogy like the sequels for Star Wars, or it's anything, like you have to have a consistent vision. If someone comes in to replace the other person, they have to respect what was there before, or else it's just not going to work. And that's what you see anytime that has ever happened, whether it be Star Wars, DC, or anything else. It doesn't work. You need to have a plan. You need to stick to that plan. You know,
And at least make it make sense.
yes, whether you like it or not, as the director, like the second director that didn't get to make that vision, you have to stick with it, all right, or else it's gonna be bad. Like,
You're gonna ruin it.
yes,
Which is what Joss Whedon did. And granted, he did great work in the MCU, but then again, you can't do that for DC. DC has a completely different tone than Marvel.
yeah,
Ever since the comics, they completely different tone. Like, and even my dad peeked in and watched a couple of bits and pieces of the film when we were watching it, and I was talking to him today about it. And of course, was asking me what I think, because he knows I love DC, and I didn't mean to hit that. I love DC, and I love the TV shows. I love the comics and everything. So even he said from the bits and pieces that he watched that it was much more serious and a lot darker.
yeah,
And I was like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be much more serious and blunt, bold, and straightforward.
Mhm.
And obviously people are like, oh, well, I don't like that. I want it to make me think. It's like, well, that's just not what DC is.
yeah. Which is not to say that like thinking can't come from the darkness. Like,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, this movie. What the hell? Okay, sorry, we got a motorcycle pretty far away. I don't know why we can hear it.
Probably
But-
speeding or something.
Maybe they're still there.
Yeah,
Gotta
they
love
are.
that.
They are hauling.
They really are. But yeah, I mean, this movie was clearly more designed to catch. I mean, yeah, thinking like if I was Snyder at the time of writing the movie, I would probably be thinking like, okay, I need to catch up like the development of these characters. Like that's my priority with this movie.
Yeah.
I don't care. Steppenwolf, he can just be a villain. It doesn't really matter because I care more about the development with
Yep.
this. So yeah, I mean, there's a
I'm
lot.
so happy Darkseid was shown. Like he's the first like big, or he's a relevant big bad throughout all of the Justice League. I mean, I was talking to Blast about Vandal Savage. He's another huge. He's a meta human, and yeah, like he's, for example, I would suggest to anyone, whether if you're new to DC or you've known about DC for a while now, there's a cartoon that was on when we were younger. I'm currently rewatching it, and they're actually coming out with a 4th season. I believe as of November they were almost done recording everything. Called Young Justice. It's so good that a couple years ago, DC was pressured enough to create a 3rd season for the 2 that already came out, and I'm currently on the 3rd season. It's absolutely amazing. It's on HBO Max, or anywhere you get your anime or cartoons. You could probably find it. it's great. Like, I specifically have very vivid memories of waking up on Saturday morning to watch, like, Ben 10, Adventure Time, and Young Justice in the Clone Wars just on.
Yep.
And it's I would highly suggest, if you want, like, peak DC content, watch that.
Yep.
It's absolutely amazing. It introduces you to, like, 95% of the characters within the DC universe. Absolutely amazing show. I can't help but preach for it. It's absolutely great.
Yeah. I'll have to watch it at some point. I'm lacking on that, but
Really good.
yeah. All right, well, that was a nice discussion. As you hear that clap, that was way too loud. So yeah, hopefully we'll fully be able to announce the name next week, or at least in the coming weeks. Got to get the branding all set. And
The
everything.
branding and brainstorming in case we come up with an idea that we like better.
Yep. And let's see. So next week we're gonna likely talk about the second Falcon and Winter Soldier episode, and we'll be 100% talking about the I hope mid-season finale of Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. In the weeks after that, like, we'll be doing weekly coverage of the Falcon and Winter Soldier. We'll talk about.
There's only 6 episodes in that, so
6 weeks of that. We'll
Yeah.
get we'll talk about Jujutsu Kaisen when that ends. We'll actually do like a one-time thing where we talk about the ending of the AOT manga when he catches up with that, and
Yes.
that's over. From there, you can look forward to stuff like
My Hero Academia starts next week.
we got Godzilla or King Kong versus Godzilla, whatever that's called. Then you got
Black Widow.
Black Widow, Bad Batch, a lot of stuff coming up. So if you got this far, you like listening to us, you're interested in those things, any of those things.
Interested in film. Of course, as we go along, we'll come up with more things to talk about.
Yep.
To make these episodes a bit longer.
Hopefully. And yeah, just if you like us, like hearing our opinions, like what we talk about, just go ahead and subscribe. We're getting the show nice and big. If you're on YouTube, of course, it's kind of a boring little thing for you to look at right now, but soon we'll be having a nice video set up. Everything's going to be coming together nicely. We're going to get a studio set up, hopefully get this audio all set. So, yeah, if you like everything, be sure to check us out on Instagram. Follow us there. That's where you're going to get updates about when episodes are coming out. Get previews occasionally for what you'll be seeing. And let's see, follow us on all the other platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud right now. And be sure to look out for whatever the name ends up being. Check the description for all other information.
Yeah.
And
That's it.
yeah, so with that, it's been a good time talking with you guys, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Peace.